The Iron Mask. Lou Gehrig never shows pain for 14 years, wearing an emotional mask so perfectly crafted that teammates, opponents, and fans believe he's immune to the physical and psychological suffering that breaks other men. Through broken bones, family tragedies, career setbacks, and mounting health problems, Lou maintains an expression of calm determination that becomes as legendary as his consecutive game streak itself. The mask became so convincing that people forget it's a performance, assuming that Lou's stoic composure reflects his natural temperament rather than extraordinary psychological discipline maintained daily. But masks, even iron ones forged through superhuman willpower, can only withstand so much pressure before they crack. The day Lou's emotional armor finally breaks reveals not weakness, but the staggering human cost of appearing superhuman for over a decade. Yankees Clubhouse. Yankee Stadium. April 28, 1939. 3:30 p.m. Lou Gehrig sits at his locker staring at his hands, which have been trembling uncontrollably for the past 3 hours. His teammates are preparing for batting practice, the usual pre-game routine, filled with jokes, strategy discussions, and the comfortable rhythm of professional athletes getting ready to perform at the highest level. But Lou isn't participating in the familiar clubhouse energy because he's fighting the most difficult battle of his entire career, trying to maintain the iron mask that has hidden his suffering for 14 years, while his body screams that the time for hiding is over. The iron mask began forming during Lou's rookie season when he realized that showing doubt, pain, or vulnerability in professional baseball was interpreted as weakness that opponents would exploit and teammates would lose confidence in. Young Lou watched veteran players who complained about injuries get labeled as unreliable, saw emotional reactions to setbacks result in reduced playing time and management doubt. He learned to transform his face into an instrument of stoic determination, never allowing external circumstances to penetrate the calm exterior that suggested he was always in complete control of every situation, regardless of internal chaos. The development of the mask required Lou to study his own facial expressions in mirrors, practicing the neutral composure that would become his trademark under pressure. He learned to control micro-expressions that might reveal frustration, to maintain steady eye contact when receiving criticism, to keep his breathing patterns regular when experiencing pain or anxiety. The mask wasn't just about hiding negative emotions, it was about projecting consistent strength and reliability that teammates and managers could depend on absolutely. Over 14 years, Lou perfected the mask until it became as automatic as breathing. Broken ribs during a crucial series against the Red Sox. The mask remained perfectly calm while Lou played through pain that would have hospitalized normal people. Death of his beloved uncle, who introduced him to baseball. Lou maintained his composed expression throughout the funeral and played that same afternoon without showing any emotional distress. Contract negotiations that threatened his financial security and family stability. The mask never wavered, giving no indication that Lou cared about anything beyond playing baseball at his highest level. The mask became so convincing that even people closest to Lou began to believe it represented his true nature rather than carefully maintained emotional armor. Eleanor learned to read microscopic changes in Lou's expression that revealed his internal state, but even she sometimes forgot that her husband's calm demeanor required constant effort to maintain rather than reflecting natural serenity. Lou's teammates developed an almost supernatural respect for his emotional control, often commenting that Lou Gehrig seemed immune to the psychological pressures that affected every other player in professional baseball. They watched Lou handle criticism from managers, hostility from opposing crowds, and personal disappointments with the same steady composure that he brought to fielding ground balls or taking batting practice. The mask required enormous psychological energy to maintain. Energy that Lou carefully budgeted to ensure he could sustain the performance for entire seasons without allowing cracks to show during crucial moments. Lou developed sophisticated meditation techniques, controlled breathing exercises, and mental visualization methods that allowed him to access the calm expression even when his internal experience involved pain, anxiety, or despair. He created mental compartments where he could store difficult emotions during games, then process them privately when the mask could safely come off. Lou discovered that maintaining the mask required not just emotional control but physical discipline. Tension in his jaw muscles could betray internal stress, so he learned to keep his facial muscles relaxed regardless of circumstances. Changes in his posture might signal discomfort, so he practiced holding his body in positions that projected confidence even when he felt neither. But the mask that protected Lou from external pressures also isolated him from the emotional connections and support systems that help most people process difficult experiences. Lou couldn't share his struggles with teammates because the mask made him appear invulnerable. He couldn't seek sympathy from fans because they viewed him as a source of strength rather than someone who might need encouragement. Even with Eleanor, Lou found it difficult to let the mask drop completely because maintaining it had become so central to his identity. The Iron Mask reached its ultimate test during the 1938 season, when Lou began experiencing symptoms that would later be diagnosed as ALS, but which he initially attributed to fatigue and the natural aging process that affects all professional athletes. As his coordination decreased and his strength began failing in subtle ways, Lou had to work harder than ever to maintain the mask while hiding the growing fear that something serious was happening to his body. The mask that once required moderate effort to maintain began demanding all of Lou's psychological resources just to keep his expression neutral, while his internal experience involved increasing panic about his deteriorating physical condition. Lou found himself practicing facial expressions in mirrors, rehearsing the calm demeanor that used to come naturally, but now required conscious performance. Eleanor noticed the increased strain of maintaining the mask during Lou's final season, watching him prepare his expression before leaving their apartment each morning, like an actor getting into character for a demanding role. She could see the exhaustion that came from spending entire days performing composure while experiencing internal chaos about his health and his future. The mask began developing hairline cracks during spring training 1939 when Lou's physical symptoms became impossible to ignore even while maintaining perfect emotional control. Teammates noticed moments when Lou's expression flickered between his usual calm and something approaching confusion or concern, but the lapses were so brief that most people assumed they were imagining things. Lou himself became aware that the mask was failing when he found himself struggling to maintain the calm expression during routine activities that had never challenged his emotional control. Simple conversations with coaches required conscious effort to keep his face composed. Routine batting practice sessions demanded constant attention to his expression rather than focusing entirely on his technique. The Iron Mask finally cracks on April 28, 1939. During what should have been a routine team meeting about upcoming road trip logistics. Manager Joe McCarthy is discussing travel schedules and hotel arrangements with his usual business-like efficiency when he casually mentions that the team medical staff has been observing Lou's recent performance patterns and wants to schedule additional comprehensive physical evaluations to determine if he's dealing with any underlying health issues that might be affecting his play. For 14 years, Lou has handled much more serious challenges without allowing his expression to change even microscopically. He's maintained perfect composure while playing through broken bones that required surgery, kept his mask intact during his father's funeral when grief threatened to overwhelm him, never let his expression waver during contract negotiations that could have ended his career. But something about hearing his health concerns discussed openly in front of his teammates, something about the casual way McCarthy delivers information that confirms Lou's worst fears about his condition becoming public knowledge. Something about realizing that his carefully hidden struggles are becoming visible to others despite all his efforts at concealment, finally overwhelms the psychological systems that have maintained the Iron Mask through more than 5,000 days of professional baseball. Lou's face, which has remained composed through broken bones, family deaths, and career crises, suddenly contorts with raw emotion that shocks everyone in the room into complete silence. The calm expression that teammates have relied on as a source of stability for over a decade disappears, replaced by a look of pain, fear, and vulnerability that reveals the staggering human cost of maintaining emotional armor for 14 years. The crack in the mask lasts only 15 seconds, but those 15 seconds change how everyone who witnesses them understands Lou Gehrig as a person. They see that the Iron Horse isn't naturally immune to the emotions that affect other men. He's simply been carrying an enormous psychological load while making it appear effortless, suffering alone while projecting strength to everyone around him. Bill Dickey, Lou's longtime teammate and friend, later describes the moment as the most shocking thing he ever witnessed in professional baseball. Not because Lou showed emotion, but because the emotion revealed how much pain he'd been hiding while appearing completely unaffected. "We all thought Lou was naturally calm," Dickey says years later. "We didn't realize he was working harder than any of us just to keep his feelings from showing." Eleanor experiences the cracking of the mask most directly because she's been watching Lou struggle to maintain it during their private moments together. When Lou comes home that evening and finally allows his composed expression to completely drop, Eleanor sees for the first time in years the exhausted, frightened man who has been hiding behind the mask of superhuman emotional control. "I can't do it anymore," Lou tells Eleanor, his face showing all the vulnerability that he's hidden from the world for 14 years. "I can't pretend that I'm not scared about what's happening to my body. I can't act like I don't need help when I desperately need help. I can't keep wearing the mask when wearing it is taking more energy than I have left to give." Eleanor realizes that Lou's decision to stop maintaining the iron mask is as significant as his eventual decision to end his consecutive game streak. The mask and the streak are both products of superhuman effort to meet impossibly high standards. When Lou acknowledges that he can no longer sustain the emotional performance, he's also acknowledging that he can no longer sustain the physical performance. The cracking of the iron mask changes Lou's relationship with his teammates, who begin treating him with gentleness rather than relying on him as a source of strength. They realize that Lou's apparent immunity to pressure has actually been extraordinary psychological discipline that deserves admiration. Lou's decision to stop wearing the mask also changes his relationship with fans and media, who begin seeing him as courageously human rather than mysteriously invulnerable. When Lou eventually makes his farewell speech at Yankee Stadium, the emotional authenticity of his words carries additional power because people know they're seeing the real Lou Gehrig rather than the carefully controlled public persona. The iron mask that protected Lou from external pressures for 14 years ultimately becomes a burden that requires more energy to maintain than Lou possesses during his final season. Removing the mask doesn't make Lou weak. It reveals the incredible strength he's been demonstrating all along by carrying emotional loads that would have crushed other people while making the effort appear effortless. Years later, when sports psychologists study Lou Gehrig's career, they recognize that his emotional control wasn't natural talent, but learned skill that required constant practice and enormous psychological resources to maintain. The iron mask becomes a case study in both the benefits and costs of suppressing emotional expression in high-performance environments. Lou's teammates who witness the cracking of the mask carry the memory throughout their careers, understanding that apparent emotional invulnerability often conceals extraordinary suffering. They learn to check on teammates who seem unaffected by pressure, recognizing that people who never show struggle might be struggling more than anyone else. The day the iron mask finally cracked didn't reveal Lou Gehrig's weakness. It revealed his humanity, and showed that the most impressive thing about the Iron Horse wasn't his immunity to pain and fear, but his willingness to carry pain and fear alone for 14 years while helping everyone around him feel stronger. Eleanor keeps one photograph of Lou from that evening, when the mask came off, showing him with an expression of complete emotional honesty that she'd rarely seen during their years together. She treasures the photo, not because it shows Lou at his most vulnerable, but because it shows him finally free from the exhausting performance of constant composure that had defined his public identity for over a decade. The iron mask that Lou Gehrig wore for 14 years wasn't made of metal, but of discipline, sacrifice, and determination to be a source of strength for others, even when he needed strength himself. When the mask finally cracked, it didn't reveal weakness. It revealed the staggering human effort required to appear superhuman while remaining fully bravely human underneath the performance. Who in your life wears an iron mask to hide their struggles while supporting everyone else? What would happen if you stopped performing emotional invulnerability and allowed people to see the human being beneath your own protective armor? Lou Gehrig's cracked mask reminds us that the strongest people aren't those who never show pain, but those who carry pain gracefully while continuing to care for others, and who eventually find the courage to let their authentic humanity show through.